Welcome again. My name is Reverend Gregory Holston, and welcome to Just Nation, a show based on faith, race, and issues of justice in Philadelphia and beyond. And we're here again, and I'm here again with my co-host, Nia Holston, to talk about a really powerful subject that affects all of us here in the city of Philadelphia. And that subject is environmental racism. And we have some wonderful guests with us here today who are going to share various different perspectives about the issue, to educate us on the issue, and to get us to start to move with real action about real change we can do together. Nia?
Yeah, I'm so excited for today's show once again, and thank you all for joining us for such a critically important topic that touches on so many different issues in relation to social justice and the movement for a better world. And so when I think of environmental justice and environmental racism, I think of all of the connections to the work that we do in terms of education, in terms of mass incarceration, in terms of gentrification, right? And so all of these issues are affected by environmental racism and climate change as well. And so,
what's powerful about this is it often is ignored by our communities, and we just simply don't realize the effect, the negative effect it's having on our health, it's having on our livelihood, it's having on our ability to have joy in our community. So we're looking for this powerful conversation today to really connect all these things together and really, again, get us moving to think about what we can do to make change. So,
absolutely. And so to start, we're going to turn it over to our first guest tonight, Shamar Pitts, who's going to introduce himself.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Shamar Pitts, and I'm co-managing director at Philly Thrive, and this is one of the issues that is the origin of why Philly Thrive exists. And it's a very, very big topic, and it's, a topic that we have to combat, and we have to step up to the plate and deliver justice for our people.
Absolutely. And to our right, we have Erica Brown. Erica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. I'm Erica Brown. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from the Sunrise Movement. And the Sunrise Movement is this national organization focused on stopping the climate crisis, creating millions of good jobs in the process, and reconstructing Black and brown and working class communities. Now, we got local chapters, so I'm the hub coordinator of our local chapter in Philly. And right now we're focused on how can we prevent as much harm as possible. And when we talk to people on the street, when we talk to people in different organizations, the number one issue is gun violence. And so what we've done is we've talked to a lot of people and created this Green Spaces, Active Places campaign that can get city council and mayor to fully fund rec centers and libraries while fixing them up, making them run on renewable energy, because these preventative solutions that give young people a hub, that give young people programs, that give young people a place to find community where we can all be jumping around in the sprinkler park instead of being sprayed with bullets, is what we think can make this city a safer place.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Anthony, why don't you introduce yourself and where you're from?
Great. I'm Anthony Giancaterino, he, him. I'm the strategy partner for Taproot Earth. I'm based here in Philly as well. So it's great to be here, and it's great to be connected with Shamar and Erica. And we are an organization that is rooted actually in the Gulf South through Appalachia, with Pennsylvania being the northern edge of that. And we do work among frontline communities who are fighting environmental racism, environmental injustice, fighting for climate solutions that are rooted in community solutions through participatory practices, issues that talk about not carbon, but talk about housing, talk about governance of land, talk about healthy, clean drinking water, talk about just transitions to renewable and sustainable economies. And we work to connect the folks in the Gulf South and Appalachia with the Black diaspora in the Global South around a campaign on global climate reparations, which maybe we can talk a little bit about tonight as well. So we're a relatively new organization, only around for the next 8 years, to support movement infrastructure and communities' ability for self-governance and self-determination around the climate solutions. So really following lead like groups like Philly Thrive in the many places in the Gulf and Appalachia.
Thank you so much. Shamar, tell us a little bit about your work, particularly around closing the refinery down and what's going on with the refinery right now.
Okay, yeah. So Erica was there from the beginning. You know what I mean? So we worked together on this one, and so the oil refinery was had a crippling effect on our community. It was poisoning us and killing us for as long as we've been living there, for generation upon generation. And so when Philly Thrive came to our community, and it just brung everything to the forefront and made everything comprehensive of exactly what was going on. So we started a campaign, Pay Up, PES, because you have an extractive industry that takes, right? And they've never invested in our community. So we suffered from environmental racism from the beginning, from the jump, by just being put in that place, by being redlined there, right? And so now we're being poisoned generation upon generation, not even paying attention to what's going on. So when Philly Thrive came, it was like, pay up PES, you gotta pay for the damage that you've caused. And PES took the next step and said, we filing for bankruptcy. And from there, the fight began. We launched a campaign to close the oil refinery for good. And we went to our legislators and asked for legislation to be passed that whoever purchases this oil refinery, they have to change it into something else. It can't be an oil refinery. And so, of course, we were met with pushback from everywhere, right? Nobody wanted to close it. So we were in that fight, and we went to the bankruptcy court, and the judge heard us, and we ultimately won. They loved our argument. We got the oil refinery closed down, and we advocated for another company called Hillco Redevelopment Partners, a worldwide company, and they had the reputation of coming in and cleaning up sites like this, right? And changing it and making it into something else, remediating the sites, right? That's the reputation that they had. So we were best of friends coming in. Now, when they came in, the very first thing they wanted to do, in which everybody does when they come to Philadelphia, they get in line for the Keystone Opportunity Zone tax break. We were against a Keystone Opportunity Zone tax break because we need the revenue right here in our community. So we no, we need this money. So, and I gotta pay taxes. That's where, the dissent started.
That's a lot there.
Yes.
I want to break it down a little bit. And Erica, feel free to jump in
Sure.
about what you guys did as well there. First, the refinery piece. So that refinery had been there in terms of oil refinery in the middle of a thriving urban area.
Yes.
For about 120 years. That's right.
150.
150 years.
Yes. Yes.
And it was the only one like that on the eastern seaboard as far as inside of actual cities. And the largest. See, I grew up in South Philly, so I'm very familiar with the plume of smoke that would come out of the refinery that they told us was not toxic at all.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
And that we found out later was toxic.
Yes.
And I think one of the group here was really involved in surveying the community about cancer and cancer-related illnesses. Can any of you talk a little bit about that?
Go ahead.
I don't know that much about the survey. I mean, I can jump in. At this point, I'm in high school. That's when I joined the Sunrise Movement when I was a junior in high school. Found out from some friends, and Alexa, someone else who works at Philly Thrive, asked me to speak at a school board meeting. And I don't know if it was specifically about the Keystone tax break, but there were some trying to get off of taxes in the school board somehow. Couldn't make them do it. That was it. And I got on there and I was watching Hassan Minhaj at the time. He was on a congressional hearing, making fun of them. So I made some jokes. I made a joke about my mom making me peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or something like that. It was fun. It was fun to do. But I spoke, and Because at first they said, no, you are going to have to pay, but then they changed their mind. And that was a first taste for me of how city politics works, where, they make the decision before the meeting. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where I come in. But to speak to more of the cancer, I think that's Shamar.
So I guess it depends on which one you want to talk about, because there's several. Mm-hmm. University of Penn did a study. Mm-hmm. Temple University did a study. Drexel did a study. And it was studies published in our newspapers, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Daily News, right, that showed how our community, suffered per capita the most in the country, not first, but in the top 5 in the country, right, per capita when it comes to asthma, those crazy different rare cancers, right? And all related to the oil refinery. Mm-hmm. So these studies were done time after time, but what happened was nothing was done about it.
And the community, until Philly Thrive and Sunrise Movement and others came, most of the community didn't even recognize that. I mean, I lived at 23rd and Morris Street, 24th from Morris Street. Church that I was first ordained at, it was 24th and Dickinson. We had deacons in the church who had these exotic cancers that were dying. Nobody told us. We had no idea what the reason was for it. One of the wives of a very important deacon lived right down the street from us. And I watched her body deteriorate because she used to always come out on the porch. And she could see her beautiful gray hair and a beautiful face. And then slowly her body just ate away. Mm-hmm. And we wondered why, and nobody explained anything to us about the relationship between the refinery and the cancers that were happening. Mm-hmm. And so that church lost a lot of good, strong leadership.
Just imagine, you look at the block you live on. Every single household, no household is exempt from someone in that household having cancer, asthma, and related illnesses. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at your block, that's just your block. When you go to the next block up, the same thing. The next block over, the same thing. The next block over this way, the same. Every household. Not one household is not left struck by these illnesses. And this is overwhelming proof that this oil refinery shouldn't be here.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so I want to broaden it out a little bit and bring Anthony into the conversation. So we're seeing this in our communities, and we're seeing how people are being affected and literally poisoned. That's not an exaggeration. Literally poisoned by these companies that are affecting the earth, affecting the climate, and are affecting our very physical bodies. And so, Anthony, if you could talk a little bit about what we're seeing here in Philly, what we're seeing here in South Philadelphia, and how that compares to the rest of the U.S., to the rest of the globe in terms of the racism that folks experience, in terms of these companies that come in terms of climate change, in terms of all of that. If you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is, well, we just heard the story and what's happening in Southwest Philly and South Philly is common across the United States, if not the globe. There's just a deep, deep reality of anti-Blackness that penetrates our policies, our society, and just the way we think and look about the planet and the environment. And so if you were to trace Philadelphia through Appalachia down the Gulf South, showing pipeline explosions of development are hitting Black and brown and low-income communities, because the communities that have resources, which tend to be more white, can push for those not to be in their spaces. And they just push it on and pass it on to low-income Black communities. And it's just a vestige of colonialism and capitalism and 200 plus years of policymaking in this country that allows that for that to happen. So we're hearing that, we're seeing that in, even in the prison systems. Before the show came on, we talked about SC Fayette, which was a prison system built on a coal ash site. Mm-hmm. And if we think about communities being taken out of Philly, through the incarceration process, the form of an extractive economy, they'd be getting sick in prison because of the systems. We can even broaden out to like our school systems. Philly's no exception. Our kids go to the public schools here, and there's not a month that goes by where we don't get a report about a health hazard. And it's just the lack of healthy investment in our communities that allows this to happen. So thinking about that, it actually expands even further out in the globe. As I mentioned earlier, we do some work across the diaspora, and we have partners who are working in Africa. And so many of the solutions we have to this crisis is thinking about how do we get off of extractive energy systems? How do we stop doing fossil fuel burning? How do we stop extracting from the ground oil? How do we stop burning coal? And the solution is renewables. The challenge to that is if you're in the Congo, all of the rare earth minerals to support batteries, to support solar panels and lithium, silicon, cell phone batteries, that's rare earth minerals that are being mined out of the Congo. And the impacts that we're hearing about happening in Philly Thrive are happening to low-income, poor Black communities in the Congo who are facing slave labor, facing really bad mining practices. And at the end of the day, it's the companies that run it that get away without paying anything. And that is like a common theme. So the common theme is across the globe, majority Black and Indigenous communities are harmed by extractive practices of these corporations. The build out of a pipeline in Uganda that is just tearing up people's access to land and land stewardship is being invested in by companies in Europe and the US that are also building a pipeline in Southwest and Southeast Texas that is basically destroying sacred burial ground of Indigenous people. And they don't care. Like, these companies do not care. And I think that's what Shamar's point, as long as they can make their money, they don't care what's happening to the communities around them. And so I think we are at a moment, though, because of the solutions and the power building that Philly Thrive is doing, because of what we're seeing in communities, the people are saying, there's a different way. We can stop this. It is not a victimization that needs to be seen. There is a lot of power in community. It's about supporting that power, supporting the solutions that are coming from communities, and reframing this as it's not a victimization. It is a strategic process by those who have resources and wealth and corporations to invisibilize and try to marginalize others. But they don't realize that there is just a lot of power in those communities, and it's about how do we build that power.
Yeah.
But we're seeing these across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
Anthony, that was very powerful, laying that out from South Philly to basically Africa to all over the world. So how do we hold companies accountable? I mean, they weren't accountable here in South Philly. They just went bankrupt and sold, and even though they destroyed lives, they just went on their merry way. And obviously they're not being held accountable in the places like Louisiana and Africa. How do we hold these companies accountable?
It's a great question. So we do we run what we call a people's movement assembly process, where we bring frontline communities together to identify solutions and then action. And what comes up routinely in a lot of these gatherings are three kind of main solutions to try to hold accountable. One is like, we need to reclaim our governance. I'm laughing when Shamar, you talked about we know how Philly politics works. That is supposed to be that is a public space. That is our space as people. We all pay taxes. We're all residents. We're all residents. We work in the city. We live in the city. Why is that governance being controlled by a Comcast or a company that doesn't have to pay taxes? Is ridiculous. So part of this is like, we actually have to do the real work of democracy, which is hard but critical. And if you can build that democracy, you can kind of reclaim and retake back governance. That's one thing. That's a long process, but it is a key solution. Is how do we start getting more people in positions of power that come from our communities that can put pressure on the policies of the laws that hold to account. The second one is we need to go after and follow the money. So one of our campaigns is around the Global Climate Reparations Funds, and it's like, how do you build a fund that these companies have to pay into? I mean, they think they should pay taxes. They're not paying taxes, or in addition to paying taxes, how do they actually pay back and repair for the harm that's being done and support the building of solutions? And that is going to require just like public pressure. It's going to require really creative narrative. It's going to require acts of resistance and just kind of demonstration. I think it's going to be a this and all. We need policies, we need action, and we need a really strong narrative that kind of shames and also helps to pivot. And then I think the third thing that really comes up is actually just people building models that put them out of business. So instead of a hill code developing, what would it look like, right, for Philly Thrive to be able to control and govern how redevelopment happens and be the decision makers of what that looks like? How can they be the developer, right? Bring in who is more accountable, who is aligned, who has strong relationships with the community, and then how do we resource that makes these companies that extract and take advantage of almost non-existent. Now, those are all long, they take some time to build, but those are the solutions that communities keep naming. We need models, we need to get the money to support these communities, and we just need to take back our governance.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I think about when I hear you speak. And what I hear is that there are so many connections to the work that we do that are in terms of environmental racism, education, mass incarceration. What I hear from what Anthony and what Erica and what Shamar has said tonight is that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed to, right? This is intentional, right? The extraction from our communities by these corporations that do not care about us, that don't have our best interests in mind, it is exactly designed to be working that way. And so we have to continue to do this pushback and continue to make these efforts to save our communities, literally save them. And so Shamar, Erica, I just wanted to check in and see if you had any thoughts or based on what Anthony said.
Sure, I can speak to how we make change, and this is something that took me a while to learn, and I learned from experience. And I think that there was one time in high school where I was just curious. I was in AP government, and I was just curious, how does the city government work? And I tried to look it up, and I couldn't figure it out. And I wasn't learning it in school. We were learning about the national government. But just as we've picked this Green Spaces, Active Places campaign, in the past couple of months I've talked with 6+ city councilors, and I've got to understand how it actually works. So how we plan to win our campaign is through the budget. And I learned that Sherelle Parker has a lot of power. There's some cities that have really powerful mayor, some cities that have a really powerful city council, we have a really powerful mayor. So she writes her proposal for the budget, and in the past it's been $800 million for police, $70 million for Parks and Rec, $70 million for libraries, right? But she writes that. And then city council can say from March to June, hey, would you please change it? Would you please? And she can say no, or okay, and then she could just not give the money where she was supposed to. So she has a lot of power. And so what we've been thinking about is like, how do we actually, put pressure on her? And this is a question that, even before this year, Sunrise has been asking, because when you think about the climate crisis, it's very easy to panic and turn that panic into fear and just isolation. Right? Which is very similar to gun violence, right? Because when you're worried about if you're going to get shot in the street, you just want to stay home, right? And so that can lead to inaction. But what we need is creativity. What we need is to come together and act together. So what Sunrise did in 2018 is they launched the Green New Deal, which is this transformational, completely transforming society. So that way we don't use any more fossil fuels and we use renewable energy. And they introduced it by taking action. And this is something that I really didn't know a lot about. So they went in, they did a sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office, and that really put pressure on her, and it affected the narrative in a really big way. And so, here's me in high school seeing this video, not knowing how my city council works. I'm like, okay, I guess maybe I'll go get involved in this group. And I knocked on doors in my community during 2020 primary elections. Great candidate Rick Krajewski, who's now a state House Representatives. And I thought, okay, maybe that's what'll work. Maybe I'll talk to my neighbors and we can elect great people like Rick Krajewski. And then, the next election comes around and, we maybe get a couple more Rick Krajewskis, but not that many. And so I recognized that, this electoral process is really slow. And then I started to learn from a lot of more people in the Sunrise Movement who told me about the civil rights movement. And they taught me, Erica, Joe Biden, he's pretty powerful, yeah? And I was like, yeah, I guess so, right? He's the president. And they're like, well, Joe Biden depends on a lot of other people to get things done. He depends on rail workers to transport materials. He depends on the military to implement his foreign policy. He depends on Congress to, not be against him. He depends on teachers to teach the kids. He depends on kids to go to schools because that's how the school district makes their money. And they said, Erica, if you can shake some of these pillars, that's when the people on the top start to notice, because they just depend on so many people. The oil refinery depends on people working to make it, to clean the inside. Right? Shamar can tell you they hire people to clean the inside of the tanks, don't even give them a mask, right? This is why labor is so powerful, why striking is so powerful, because these billionaires can't do much on their own. And so I learned that it's about figuring out who's in power, what they can do, and who they rely on. There's much more specifics and theory and about tactics and action that I've learned, but that's really the building blocks of it.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So there might be some people who are watching the show who are like, really? Gun violence is connected to environmental racism? Rec centers are connected to environmental racism? What do you mean by that? And so, what do you mean by that? And can you share that with our audience?
I can. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Shamar?
Sure. So the way gun violence is connected to environmental racism is our environment is shaped the way it's shaped. It's a plan. It's not by accident, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't just happen that way. So if you look at it, the schools that we went to, I went to Orton Reed, I went to Child's School, I went to Barrett, I went to Southern, right? And I went to Furness. And when you walk in the building in Orton Reed, it's dark and gloomy, and there's no authority figure, and you're allowed to just do whatever, right? There's not too much learning going on, right, at this particular point in time. So it's like we don't have education. We're cut off from that. You're cut off from education. That immediately cuts you off from economics, because you can't function in a world where you have to be trained to think, because you're not used to thinking. Your thought patterns are just off. So now we're cut off from education, right? But at the same time, right across the street from Orton Reed, you can see the oil refinery, and they're making billions of dollars. We don't have any after-school programs. Our sports programs are minimal, right? Sometimes teachers don't even come to school, right? And this is environmental racism. How is it possible for a billion-dollar industry to be directly across the street from your school, and the school is crumbling around the students? It's impossible for it to be an accident. We know it's not an accident. It's a plan. So now, fast forward to now, all these years later, gun violence is out of control and nobody knows why. You know why? Because there's no investment in education. It cuts us off from being knowledgeable. Now we grow up ignorant. So it's easy for me to believe that a gun will solve the problem. It's easy for me to believe that because I haven't been raised right and taught right in the schools that I went to. So this is how the connection to environmental racism plays out in our community.
That's powerful. And for the record, I was a teacher at Orton Reed for about 7 years.
Okay.
And the toxins from the oil refinery would just blow through the building. If you kept your windows open, and you had to because there was no air conditioning,
right,
or on a warm day, all of the toxins of the oil refinery, those things that the sulfur smell, all of would flood the building. And therefore poison us. And again, they would tell us everything's fine. Everything's fine. That's just a little smoke. No problem. Orton Reed itself was through a debate about not having black students go to South Philadelphia High School, which really where they should have gone. Not the Barrett kids, not the Orton Reed kids. They made Orton Reed a high school so they could funnel off those kids into a building that was made for junior high school kids.
Yes.
And had that building there for 25 years.
Yes.
So you had the environmental racism of the toxins of the area flooding the school. You had the physical plan of the school that was built for junior high school kids, with really no gymnasium, no real athletic program, no music program to really speak of, and then the lack of resources that go into the education plan and the intentional segregation of black students, all in that same area. That is a combination called environmental racism.
All day long.
Yeah, and it happens, I guess, as Anthony has said, all the time. So I just a quick question about that, if I could. We talked a little bit about the refinery being gone now. I want to come back to that now. What's happening now there that you're organizing around that we can use some of these skills and tactics we just talked about?
Okay, so now, just so everybody know, this is the largest redevelopment in the history of our city right now taking place. And right now taking place, we fighting tooth and nail for it not to be business as usual. Because like Anthony said previously, these companies, they do these things, and guess what? They are good at it. They good at it. So right now, while we got a campaign going on, they got a campaign going on. And they got a lot of money behind their campaign. And their campaign is on TV, is on buses, is on everything, right? And their campaign is saying, we're going to be a great neighbor. We're going to do all of these things. We're going to make so many jobs. It's going to be so great for your community. But now what I'm saying is, when I see it, when I look over there, I say, man, look, we got a clean slate. The Green New Deal is perfect for this spot right here. It's a clean slate, the largest redevelopment in our city. Let's go green. Why we can't go green? Because PGW don't want to go green. PICO don't want to go green. And that's who run this city. They run this city, and the oil and the natural gas companies run this state. So it don't matter that we got a clean slate and we can start and we can remodel and remediate and rejuvenate our community right now. You can take away all of those things that used to happen and flip it. But they don't want to do that because they want their money. They want their money. That's the first thing. So when I come on the scene with Erica right next to me and I say, when you start building, we want fossil-free, new technology, all modern technology right here, right now. That's the first thing we want. I ain't even talking about no money. I'm talking about investment. That's what we want. Philly Thrive, we don't want to deal with them. We don't want them at the table. We don't want to do no CBA with them. And guess what? It's a black and brown community. Our city council and our mayor, everybody's black. It's the blackest it's ever been in the history of this city. And guess what? Man, they take Hillco and they baby them and they protect them and they try to shield them from us. Let's just work around Philly Thrive. Matter of fact, make sure Philly Thrive don't have no success in nothing that they do. Why? Because they in it. They in it. They in it. And I hate to say it because I know some of them personally. And I got love for them. But they in it, man. They in it. And I'm against them. Even though I love them, I'm against them 100%, and I'm going to call them out and everything. I ain't got no problem with it. But that's how serious this is. It's a clean slate. Why we won't go green?
Erica, you want to add anything to your work and particularly around this redevelopment project?
I do. That was a lot.
It was
You make me
beautiful.
smile every time we.
But you told the truth, though.
Yeah,
You told the truth.
for real. And I guess so. When I'm coming in the picture back in 2022, I hear about the Hillco redevelopers, and I hear about Philly Thrive won a CBI. I didn't know what it was, Community Benefits Agreement. Put money in the community. No more fossil fuels. Create, like you were saying, Anthony, control, community control over what's going to happen at this site. And you come up with this great plan, and you propose it to them, and they're like, yeah, we can't do that, but we're a good neighbor. So we will give you a CBA. Here you go. You read it. It says, we'll give you turkeys on Thanksgiving. We'll put refrigerators in your parks and fill them with food sometimes.
Yeah.
The end. Right? And so they're doing the bare minimum.
What, no fried chicken?
No watermelon, right?
They may as well have said that.
Yes, yes, for real.
And so again, they're doing the bare minimum. They can do give a good face, but get what they want behind the scenes. And I actually just want to go back to the question about gun violence, because this is about our health. And the Sunrise Movement, we're about creativity. We want to create, because I think that's the opposite of fear. Some people say hope is the opposite of fear. You need hope, but you can be, all alone in your home, hopeful that things are going to get better. But to create, you got to be vulnerable, and you got to go out in the real world and do things. And so when we're talking about creating, do you feel creative when you have an empty stomach? Do you feel creative when you don't have your basic needs met, right? And so when we're talking about gun violence and environmental racism, we're talking about, why is there gun violence? Is it because, let's take a step back. Because no matter where you're from, what part of the city, what color your skin is, how much money you have in your wallet, we all need a roof over our heads. We all need fresh food, right? But it's these Hilcos, it's some of these corrupt politicians who say they divide and distract us intentionally. That's what racism is. It's a tool. Because if we all come together, we outnumber them, by so much. But their only strategy is to divide us and pit us against each other, right? And so when we're talking about gun violence, they'll say, that's just black people. That's just how they are, right? But what they're covering up is the fact that we don't got fresh food, which is that there's an oil refinery in our backyard, there's lead, there's no education, right? And so when we're talking about environmental justice, we're talking about the same thing, where it's about health, it's about making sure that there's trees on your block, so that way there's shade and it's not hot. We're talking about making sure that there's good jobs, making sure that there's a garden you can go walk by, making sure that there's clean water, which all of that makes sure that people have the basic needs they need, and so they don't ever feel like they need to pick up a gun. And so that's what we're talking about, these root issues here.
Absolutely.
Powerful. Anthony, if you can link the development that's going on and also this gun violence piece to this overall environmental racism.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate what both Erica and Shamar have shared. Erica, I really appreciate the taking on the fear, because that is such the narrative of the climate crisis. It's very fear-based, and it's like, we're not going to win. Not going to solve this out of fear. So I appreciate your mention of creativity. One of the things I was thinking about, Shamar, when you were talking about this, and I had to quickly look it up as you were discussing. So there was a study that showed that there was a 7 to 10% increase in gun violence when temperatures rise. If you think about Philly, we live in Mount Airy, we live near the woods, so our summers are a lot less cooler than if you're in North Philly or in West Philly or in Southwest Philly, where there's a lot less trees, a lot more concrete. Mount Airy is diverse, but there's more white communities than there are in North Philly, where it's majority black, right? So the gun violence happens where communities are living with less access to the trees and to the spaces that Erica was just talking about, right? That leads to the gun violence. And on the lead, there was a study that showed nearly half of all gun violence has been linked to people who've had high lead exposure. Well, think about who has lead exposure. It is, again, majority black and brown communities going to schools, like what we were all just talking about, these homes that have not been invested in. So it's all about disinvestment in communities that do not look white. I mean, that is, at the end of the day, that is what environmental racism is about. It's the disinvestment in black communities and the investment in non-black communities, leading to all of the hazards that has been just talked about. So this idea of Hilco, the development, right? We have an opportunity, as Shamar was naming, an opportunity to reimagine, to create, to build a better community. Can we not just repeat the exact same systems that we've had? And maybe it could be greener, but if it's still being done that is extracting from our communities, and how it is maybe healthier, but it's not going to be transformative. And I hear what Shamar and what Philly Thrive is trying to do is we can disrupt this cycle of disinvestment and actually have a cycle of investment that is transformative and that is governed by us as people. And that is what we're seeing. We're seeing that across here in Philly with the largest redevelopment site, as Shamar said, but we're also seeing it happen in the Gulf South. We're seeing it happen all through Appalachia. As these industries are starting to be on their last stages, communities are saying, we have an opportunity to reimagine and to create, to not move from fear, but to move with this idea of possibility. And this is the moment, I think this is the moment we're in right now. I mean, we are facing the urgency of the crisis. We're already blowing past all of the targets in the climate conversation, that we're going to be past sea level rise, the temperatures are going to be too high. But we're also at this moment to like, there's fissures in the system. We can step in and recreate and build possibility on these types of redevelopments. And at this point of like the divide and conquer, that is so true. And we even saw that, you know, with the IRA bill that President Biden had pushed through, that was the largest investment in the US around green solutions. But what happened was it sacrificed the Gulf South in order to get offshore wind in the Northeast. That is, you know, there's still that divide and conquer, right? They allowed more oil and gas drilling in the Gulf South in order for offshore wind to happen in the Northeast. And like, that's not quite the right solution. And we see this, right? We want to be able to build from, Shamar named it, we are stuck because we are in a state that is owned by oil, gas, and coal. We've got to be able to build with Southwest PA and Philadelphia. And if we can connect, that's going to be a lot harder for them to divide us. And if we can connect Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky to Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, those companies just can't go move to the next town because they're going to be like buffed and stopped, rebuffed and stopped. And that is like the power of creativity. That is the power of building. And it's the power of like connecting across race and class, because that's what it's going to take for us to be able to do that. So we are in a moment of redevelopment, I think. And it's just a matter of who gets to have a say. And I really do believe that the models, that the work that Shamar and Philly Thrive are doing, that the activism and the organizing that Sunrise has done to build up youth leadership is tantamount to like this being possible.
Excellent, Anthony. Thank you for addressing it. But I'm going to throw out this question mainly because I'm curious. I don't know. Can this area that once was an oil refinery actually be cleaned up and be a healthy place for people to live at, period? Can that happen? Anthony, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can. It's going to take a lot of remediation, but it is totally possible. It's going to take time, but this is a very small example, but I just want to name how the possibility happens. When the BP oil disaster hit in Louisiana, BP did the same thing that, like, you know, we're seeing all these advertisements. We want to be your friend. BP's like, oops, sorry. And a whole campaign to say, look, we're doing new technologies. The solution, though, to that was quite indigenous and just quite grounded. It was like, we need to plant particular greens to pull up all the toxins from the soil. It was kind of like that work, and it did a lot of different collard greens and different types of greens that are used in most communities. They obviously wouldn't eat them to pull up the dirt and soil, but they would plant sunflowers, collard greens, and other greens to pull up all of the toxins and the terribleness in that ground. It takes some time, but they were able to like rematriate and like kind of return the soil back to livable, healthy soil after some time.
Is that why I don't like collard greens?
Sorry, go ahead.
Just a joke about collard greens. I never liked collard greens very much, so now I know what collard greens do.
Right? It can pull up pulls up all that stuff. So
yeah, pull all that stuff up.
It's there, you know. So that is one solution. I mean, for a thing like the PES, I mean, you're going to need a lot more than just greens. But there are practices that can be done. It is possible. You can do stuff with that land, and some of that land may not be returnable for some time. You can plant trees, and you can other parts that are less damaged. You can build. I mean, it just takes it's the lack of creativity and the lack of wanting to invest in community that stops it. Yeah. But the technology and the indigenous technology is there.
Yeah, Shamar, you had something you wanted to tap in on.
This is an example. Now, you just heard what he just said, right? Right now, we saying we want to do that. They saying they want to put cement over top of it. They want to put cement over top of it. That's the remediation. And we saying there's plenty of techniques that can be used to remediate the land. They want to build on it without cleaning it. So right there, tells you right there, they just want to do business as usual. Let's get our money. That's their plan. Raise the land up, because it's the floodplain. They're in the floodplain. Raise the land up. Put cement over top of the parts that we want to build on. and let's build on them right now. They're in the process of trying to get sanctioned and get there, all of the, the things that they got to fill out, all the requests and all those things, so that they can build. They're breakneck speed trying to build. They're not trying to remediate. And we saying, you got to clean it first. If you raise the land, put cement over top of it, we become the floodplain.
Yeah.
The water is coming from out of the ground. Flood water comes from out of the ground for people who don't know. The ground gets saturated. The water comes from out of the ground. The ground can't take it no more. The water runs off. It's going to run on us. If you got contaminated land, water that comes from that land is going to be contaminated, and then we're going to be contaminated by the flood water. And they saying, there's no way the city will let us do that. There's no way the EPA will let us do that. Well, just go to the Inquirer. The EPA just had a recent article in the Inquirer. We let PES kill everybody, and we didn't do anything about it. They tell you they let it go down. So how we supposed to say the city gonna protect us, EPA gonna protect us? We gotta protect ourselves.
Powerful, powerful. Erica, you want to add anything that?
Yeah, I'll add something small, which is that when I talk about all the jobs that got created, right? Because I mean, talking about Shamar, you always put it so plainly. You always know this article, just lay it out, because they'll say, oh no, we're doing it the right way, we promise. But then it's not hard to find out unless you're paying attention. But in order to do things the right way, a lot of the solutions exist, right? I thought maybe I would go to college, right? And I wanted to go into paleontology and study dinosaurs. That's what I wanted to do. But I was like, oh wow, this climate crisis is really gonna mess up my life. So maybe I'll go be an engineer and I'll create the windmill that'll save us all. That's what I thought. But then I get this book, it's called Drawdown. It's like this thick with all these climate solutions. You turn the page, you see, if we do this solution, it'll like cut carbon in half. If we do this one, it'll cut it by a fourth or whatever. And I realized, whoa, we got all the solutions right in front of us. I'm holding it in my hand, right? And it's got a whole chapter about indigenous solutions. It's got a whole chapter about women and how we can use the climate crisis to help women get more power wherever they live around the globe. And so we got the solutions, and to implement them is going to take a lot of work, but that means it can bring a lot of jobs, and that means it can bring a lot of prosperity to communities where jobs have left or been taken away, is what I should say. And again, but it's all up to the politicians and up to the corporations to say, do I want these jobs or do I not? And if they choose no, we have no option but to take them for ourselves.
How?
So I got something that's just been kind of what I've been thinking about in my mind, kind of percolating from this conversation, because we've talked about how they like to divide and conquer, right? We've talked about that. And one of the things that we hear about the environmental justice movement, about the climate change movement, is it's white led. To put it plainly, Black people don't care about climate change. And if they don't care about climate change, then we have the right and the opportunity to do whatever we want in those communities, right? And I do think that there are even some Black politicians who will say those kinds of things. Well, that's not what my community cares about, right? And so I'm curious to hear, how do you push back on that? How do you all push back on that in your work, where you're doing this work and you are Black and brown people, you are seeing Black and brown people in this movement who are doing this work and can easily say that that's not the case. So my question is, how do you push back on that? And then also, are there opportunities for the movement to grow?
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said before, we suffer from poor education, so we become ignorant, right? And they use the oldest tricks in the books on us, right? And one of the things that they use on us right now to this day is that Philly Thrive, they white people. They white people coming in the Black neighborhood. They taking advantage of the Black people. They want to get grants. That's all they're here for. They want to get grants in your name, and they want to use you and take the money, and then they're going to leave. So the way you fight against that is, first of all, don't pay that no mind. To all white people, don't pay that no mind. Do your work. Your work speaks for itself. Because I'm Black, and I'm from Grace Ferry. and the work speak for itself, right? Some people, you know, they try to equate you to what they do. They do all of those things. Oh, you getting paid. That's why you doing it. Man, I ain't getting paid nothing. What are you talking about? I ain't getting paid what you getting paid. Definitely ain't getting nowhere near that. Am I getting paid with Hilco getting paid? I ain't getting none of that money. So don't pay it no mind and put that work in and keep on doing it. And before you know it, it'll get bigger. It'll get bigger. When you do the right thing, people notice, because we all know right from wrong. I don't care what your education is. We know right from wrong. Keep doing right. The people going to see you doing right. They're going to respect you. And even if they can't do it because they got bad habits, some people got bad habits of doing wrong, they don't want to come and join you because they feel like, I'm going to be doing wrong. Eventually, they're going to come. That's how you lead by example. Just keep doing the right thing.
And the of these kinds of solutions they're the right thing, and they're also the right thing for our economy in the long run, the right thing for our community in the long run, the right thing the way wealth can be shared, and that we all can prosper together in the right way. It's just a question: do we want to do the short-term thing that gives a short-term blessing to few, a benefit to few, and not to the many? Or can we do these long-term things where everybody can be benefited? And that's really what leadership is all about. So this is a challenge to our political leaders. Here are real solutions from real people in the community. Real solutions from real people in the community about from Philadelphia about this particular environmental racism, not just in South Philly, not just where the refinery was, but in places like North Philly, places like Allegheny Avenue has high asthma rates, places like Germantown, who has high levels of lead paint in the schools, in the homes. All of these places these issues can be handled with the right kind of legislation, with the right kind of policies that can really be fruitful to everybody. We're really in that place where we can really do that and come together to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yes, go ahead.
So I know Issa Rae has this quote, "I'm rooting for everybody black." Now, I'm going to say, I'm always rooting for black people. Like, let's make that clear. But what I will say is I love Derica Purnell's twist on that. Lawyer, movement, legal worker, abolitionist, all of that. Her twist on that is, and she's black as well, I'm rooting for everybody resisting oppression, right? And that shows, it's like, whose side are you on? What are you doing to create the world in which we want to live in? And you know, what are you doing to work against that? And if you're working against that, then I'm not with you, and I can't be with you, and I will never be with you.
Cannot be with you.
Right?
Cannot be with you.
Right? So I'm rooting for everybody resisting oppression. Word to Derica. Now, what I will say is I have questions about, I'm sure there might be some young people joining this show, or they might see clips of this and they're like, wow, I want to be like Erica. I want to know what Erica is doing out here and how can I get involved? So if you can share a little bit, perhaps share the socials for the Sunrise Movement, or share any other active campaigns. If you could share that for our viewers so that they have that information
and how
as well.
they can contact all of you here.
Yes, absolutely.
As we get ready to close, or have our time of closing.
Fantastic. So you can follow us on Instagram at Sunrise MVMT Philly. That'll be the best place to see all of our actions, because we are in a campaign that's about to ramp up. And so if you DM us, we'll be able to get you involved right quick. And yeah, hopefully you'll be seeing us all over the news. This Thursday, we're going to City Hall with these beautiful postcards that we went to rec centers. We had kids draw what they want to see. It's, very colorful, fantastic. And we're going to go in front of City Hall and say, hey, this is what you got to be funding right here. And then we're going to go drop it off at Sherelle Parker's office so that she'll meet with us. And we got a lot of creative tactics up our sleeves that I can't say yet that we'll be getting into. So definitely can use anyone who wants to join.
Give that site one more time where people can look
Sure
up
thing.
that over the next couple of months as well.
That's right. Our Instagram, which is at Sunrise MVMT Philly.
Okay, awesome,
Great.
awesome. Thank you so much for the work that you've been doing. It's just really, really incredibly impactful. And, to be a youth leader doing this work is just incredibly impactful. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Shamar?
Yeah, so I don't know all of our social media outlets. I'm not social media savvy like Erica here, but I know you can find us on phillythrive.org, and you can get in touch with us that way. And you can always look at us. We're on YouTube also. So just join us, phillythrive.org, and join the fight. Join the fight. Erica and I, we welcome everybody to come in. So we need everybody to come in.
Black, white, or brown.
Right. We need
Don't matter.
everybody to come in. Everybody that want to be against oppression, as Nia just said, against oppression, be with us. That's what we about. And we at phillythrive.org.
Thanks so much. Anthony, if you could share.
Sure. So we are at taproot.earth. I think our socials, I should know this too. I'm like Shamar, I'm terrible on social media, but it's at Taproot Earth. This is our Instagram, and then Facebook, as well as Twitter. So you can find us there. We're building up our social media as we move. You can also email us at peace, PEACE, at taproot.earth, and we'll get in touch. And I just want to say thank you all for the time. I'm sorry I was not there in person, but it was an honor to be with you all in this conversation. And just again, tremendous just appreciation and respect for Erica and Shamar and the work you all are doing in Southwest Philly. And then to Reverend Holston and Nia just for hosting these conversations, because we don't have these conversations enough in this country. So I'm glad to be able to do it here in my home city and kind of connect Philly to the globe in these conversations. So excited to connect and support you all as we continue on.
Yeah, word. So, since we have a couple of minutes left, I'm just sort of thinking, and I'm so glad that you guys were all able to share what you have going on in the work that you're doing. One of the things that comes up, and I think I might have seen this on a Sunrise Movement's Instagram page, where the response to funding rec centers, or the response to ending gun violence, or the response to this public health crisis is, oh, well, we have to think about fiscal responsibility. And so there's always enough money for police or tools that oppress us. There's always enough money for that. You can never have enough money for that, right? So that cops can have beach houses in South Jersey. But you didn't hear that from me. But what I will say is, I just think that it is so incredibly important for us to be able to push back on these narratives of, oh, well, we can't afford this. No, we can't afford not to do this, right? And so I just wanted to hear if anyone else has any parting thoughts, as we have one minute.
So I'm going to try to pull some of that together in the sense that I am still moved by so many people, as I shared earlier, in South Philly that died of cancer, who did not know why they were dying. So many children today who have asthma, who don't know why they have asthma. People in prison right now who were filled with lead poisoning, who lost control of their emotions because that's what it affects, are now sitting in jail cells because they didn't know it was the environment that has created the conditions that has structured the pain of their lives. And the powerful thing here is we have not done nearly enough to provide safe environments that really creating a clean, green environment, as this mayor says she wants to do, is actually the way you create a safe environment. And that's the power of all of these tools that we spend so much money on policing and law enforcement, when if we just spent the money on making a healthy environment for everybody, it would make us all safer. And so I want to close on that point, that environmental racism has to get to the top level of our government in terms of policy. We have to make a real change in how we think, and when we do that, we all can grow and thrive together.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us today on Just Nation. Tune in next time and be with us again. Thank you so much.